On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Michael Hudes. He's the president and CEO of LG Ad Solutions. We're going to be talking about building the future of advertising and media. And where we're really going to go is talk about what is happening to these screens. Everyone had or has a television, and really we're seeing that as an extension of video. And Michael actually referred to that as attached to the internet, a screen attached to the internet. That really got me thinking. I'm going to be really curious as to talking about that next frontier, kind of getting past some of the old ways of consuming on TV and what the new ways are going to be. Michael, thanks for being on the show to share with us.
It's my pleasure, Amir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. LG Ad Solutions, what do you guys do over there?
I appreciate that. So LG Ad Solutions is a subsidiary of LG Electronics. We are their global partner responsible for building and maintaining an advertising tech stack that allows LG to build audiences in their environment being the connected TV experience that the connected to TV experience that consumers engage with when they turn on their LG TVs. So we are sitting behind the screen. We've developed software and software tools that allow both LG, ourselves, and partners to sell advertising and other forms of consumer engagement to sort of grease the wheels of a very large and growing segment of media that is broadly described as connected TV advertising.
And as this topic, talking about the future of advertising and media, you mentioned something really interesting, that television is really not spoken about. We don't really hear a lot of people saying, I'm going to go watch TV. And then once you said that, it really got me thinking. We do refer to the TV, the actual physical device, but you said it's really just now synonymous with video. Maybe you can kind of start us off there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's funny, a lot of this emanates from our largest customers, which are the media agencies attached to the holding companies, global holding companies that, we transact with on a daily basis. They used to have big TV buying teams. Those have now been replaced by video buying teams. And I think what that's a reflection on is the fact that the internet has reinvented how that big screen in your living room behaves. And, where it was at one point a playback, and still is to a certain degree, a playback mechanism. I pick up a remote, I click it, and I lean back. Today, it's an environment that is more highly engaging. And so as we think about that from the perspective of LG, which is in the screen business across a number of channels, we see huge opportunities to engage with audiences in the moment that just never existed before. So, the word television is still there, but I think it's just a convenient descriptor for that represents a much larger ecosystem that we're really looking to drive on a global basis.
And, when you're talking about, obviously, television being replaced by, we're focused on buying video. You mentioned that basically we're talking about screens attached to the internet. Everything's streaming at this point. That is pretty much, my daughter's 11. She doesn't watch TV. She only sees it streaming, which is sometimes she'll avoid the same show on Cox and watch it on the streaming service, which blows my mind. But that is also the generation that you're looking at, that phenomenon that we're just basically talking about content being streamed, and then we'd have the dynamics of social media, which I don't, there's a lot of them, we don't need to name them. When you start thinking about the fact that we're just really talking about that screen to the video, where is the opportunity for a company like LG Ad Solutions? Because there's a lot of data points there. There's a lot of touch points that you could possibly start imagining.
I think we should first start thinking about what the experience actually is, because streaming is certainly a part of it. The opportunity, once the television is connected, for the individual on the other side of the screen to engage, whether that engagement is looking for content, which is an obvious play, whether that individual is looking to use the screen to educate, right, gather and receive information, or just the pure utility of the screen, which could be anything from gaming to shopping and the like. There's real opportunities to move beyond, again, this sort of passive lean back environment and really use this screen for optimal engagement. So at LG, we describe the opportunity in the broadest sense as the LG verse. And what is that? Well, today the LG verse is hundreds of millions of screens connected through a platform called WebOS, which is our operating system. And these hundreds of millions of screens all allow for the creation of bespoke experiences for the consumer in the moment, depending on the placement of those screens, where they're located. So, for example, we start with the television in the living room. That's the largest screen. But LG, as it evolves its appliances business, also can now promote screens in the kitchen. As they promote their B2B business, and a big subset of the B2B business is the hospitality industry. Think Marriott, think Hilton hotel rooms. There's a huge opportunity there to reinvent what in-room television looks like. And as the largest providers of LCD screens to the auto industry on a global basis, there's now opportunity to, in the back seat of the vehicles, predominantly deliver content and high engagement utility. So all of these elements of the LG verse is what really represents the market opportunity for a connected world, which doesn't mean ads blaring at you from all direction as you sort of move through the world, through time and space. What is most important to recognize is that each of these experiences are bespoke, again, for the moment that the consumer engages, whether that involves content, whether that involves utility, commerce, information. It may or may not contain an ad, depending on how it's being depending on what's being presented. But there's just a big opportunity here to take advantage of the internet and take advantage of these screens and create opportunities for serendipity, create opportunities to be educated, create opportunities to to transact.
Interesting. I actually want to come back to the LG verse. I like that. But I want to ask you a question about Bespoke, because there is a lot of talk out there about devices are listening to us. And it's a big conversation point. You can hear both sides. You mentioned Bespoke, which I think is something that people are not hearing. They're not hearing that it's not that people are trying to listen to what you're saying. They're actually trying to tailor experiences. You mentioned Bespoke. You mentioned, going to a hotel room. I was thinking in my mind as you were speaking, it'd be great if I could possibly go from my home to the hotel room. If it's an LG TV and I have an LG TV, it knows me, it loads up my favorite apps, and I'm already watching or streaming something I recorded, so I don't have to download, fiddle, all that stuff. That reduces friction, which is where the data comes in. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I want to be very, very careful here and very mindful of this part of the conversation, because we invest a lot of time and resources and energy in ensuring that we are privacy and compliant, whether that's CCPA in the state of California where I live, which is sort of a beacon for the rest of the United States, GDPR throughout Europe, and the like. So we're very, very mindful of our role when it comes to, quote, identifying and understanding the consumer. We're not here to collect any personal information. We're here to infer, based on how you consume content, a little bit about you. And that's how we build audience segments through our technology, one that we pioneered called ACR. So, as far as creating bespoke experiences, I use that to illustrate the idea that if I'm in the kitchen and there's a screen on my refrigerator, I don't believe that that's necessarily television. I think the screen on the refrigerator can provide me with information. It could be information on what's actually in my refrigerator, what needs to be reordered. It could be a sponsored recipe that I want to utilize for my meal planning that night. So that's very different than it's just another place to broadcast a show on A&E, or have me access my Peacock account. Again, back to your example that you used for the hotel room, whether the LG screen knows me or not, what should be enabled from the standpoint of a Hilton or a Marriott is an efficient way to actually use that screen to promote their own interests on property, as well as to give the consumer the option to access programming that fits that environment, and possibly to then access its own streaming apps, the apps that it has already paid for that week but can't consume because they're not at home. So there's lots of ways for all of these elements to work together. So but in a bespoke fashion. Again, I come back to, it's not television everywhere. That's a mistake, as people think about screens and I don't want more TV, I don't want more ads. What they need to do is think about these experiences as being appropriate in the moment for what the consumer's expectation is. Again, content, utility, information, commerce, and maybe ads.
Interesting. I guess as you talked about screens, and maybe this is a little bit outside of the LG ads world, but LG related, just kind of curious. You mentioned appliances, and if there's a screen there, it's capturing information. We can easily see that there's technology coming to understand what's inside of, let's say, an appliance, a refrigerator in this case, and to kind of be thinking ahead of potentially what you're looking for. And that's seemingly a lot of unique data points that LG would have. I mean, that's a lot of first party data that no other company would have, because you typically have one refrigerator. And in this case, if it understands a little bit better, it's an interesting dynamic because, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the screens, the first party data, and then the unique places where LG sits and how that creates a completely, you mentioned LG verse, and this is us coming back to it, is a very different view of that experience, because there are data points that in my Fire TV doesn't potentially have, because it is at a different depth into my home. How is that? I guess when you're kind of thinking about that experience, you're thinking about the information that you have at your disposal. Where do you see that going? And I think really the question behind that is, we actually talked about moving past the playback to the next frontier, because this is information that hopefully builds into that next level.
Yeah, I think my response is going to be it will be consistent with what we were just speaking of, which is, we're very, very conscious about the first party data that we capture. It's really important from a consumer perspective that they understand, if there's any data to be captured, what it is, what it's going to be used for, and do they have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. If they choose to opt in, we want to ensure that the data is used in a constructive way, that it creates some value. And I could argue that a targeted ad, an ad that speaks to me on a subject that or of interest, is of value. I could argue that if there's data taken, and I want to underscore the word if, there's data taken off an appliance that helps, that can then be used to help me make decisions about products that could be are like products that could help me from the standpoint of promotion, right? Where I could maybe save some money, which is a utility, which would allow for some brands to market, but market in a way that's constructive. I think all of that is where the future lies. But again, it has to be very thoughtfully it has to be very thoughtfully executed because no company involved in any internet related business, right, IP based business, wants to be construed as prying into individuals' lives and somehow taking advantage of that information to their benefit, but not to the consumer themselves.
No, 100%. Obviously, yeah, that's paramount. I think trust is of most importance. When you view us, and we're talking about the future of advertising and building into these bespoke solutions, obviously the first party data is critical, handling that with utmost care. Where do you see potential opportunities down the road, and how is it going to look different than what we've experienced in the past?
Well, I think, and I hate to bring this up because I'm sure in most every one of your podcasts it finds its way into the conversation. But I do think that artificial intelligence is going to play a big role in our business going forward, and it's going to serve two purposes. Maybe the most obvious maybe in the most obvious way, I believe that artificial intelligence will help curate these experiences for the individual. That by learning just enough about you, whether it's explicit or implicit, all permission based, you are presented an experience that matters to you, that makes it easier for you, that enables you to access content or the utility that you want when you turn a device on. I think that's where AI can really help. Let's call that broadly personalization. As it relates to the back end, when it comes to running a business, and this is not unique to LG Ad Solutions, but for a company that works with as much data as we do every day as we transact our business, right? Our ability to mine that data for patterns, right, and use that data to more efficiently execute the business on a daily basis is the going to be the difference between our, sort of surpassing expectations on the company's performance or meeting expectations on the company's performance. So we're obviously investing. We recently created the LG Ads Innovation Lab. The purpose is to figure out how AI and machine learning can help do the things that I just described on the front end, on the consumer facing front end, through things like personalization, and then just allowing us to optimize our business on the back end, because you can imagine a company that is selling ads on a global basis, both through direct selling, what we call managed service, and programmatic selling, which is, algorithmically getting ads sourced and placed into our ecosystems. There's a lot of work that can be done with technology to ensure that that flywheel keeps spinning with little friction.
It just sounds to me, when you mention the application of technology, the application of AI, we've been hearing the last 10 years that every company is now a tech company. I think sometimes software companies look at that and go, that's not the same thing. As I'm listening to you, it certainly sounds like what you guys are doing, the WebOS from LG, all the data you have. This is, and talk about AI, we're talking about sophisticated technologies. We're talking about the fact that LG Ad Solutions is a tech company. I mean, is that, given the amount of data and the data that's available to the company, is that where things have come full circle? I mean, have we seen now that it is actually true that you are a tech company more than anything else?
I mean, for sure. I mean, the history of the company is as one of the pioneers of ACR, which is sort of fundamental to creating audience segments that can then be monetized. And so, from the jump, we are an ad tech company. We've sort of built around that core system as the company has scaled from small to now very large. It just so happens that we face the industry, the media industry, on a broad scale because we sell the advertising on behalf of LG's inventory that they own and operate. So LG has got a free advertising supported TV app called LG Channels. That's most like businesses that consumers are familiar with, Tubi Pluto, etc. So we have our own fast app. And then throughout the user experience, throughout the UI UX, there's placement, there's ad inventory placements that we also take to market. So again, this is a very large business. It's how we earn the money that we need to continue to invest in our platform. But yeah, we are a tech business first and foremost, and the team that we partner with at LG, which is a part of LG Electronics and their home entertainment group, is actually titled Platform. So if you were in Seoul a year ago, this September, so this would have been September 2023, you would have heard the CEO of LG Electronics, William Cho, stand up and say, we are no longer a manufacturing company. We are now a platform business. And that platform business is this combination of assets that allow LG to create the bespoke experiences that we're now pioneering as we globalize the business.
Very cool. It's a fascinating space. I think, there's been developments in the last year or two through acquisitions, and there seems to be a large interest. I'm on the outside. I don't have the depth of knowledge you do, but for looking from the outside in, you see a lot of interest to these attached screens to the internet when they come into the home. And I think obviously what you can do with it, we're just kind of starting out, it seems.
100%. It's still early days, actually. I mean, the shift away from broadcast television and cable television to this world of connected television has been ongoing now for a number of years. It's clear that the traditional means of consuming content have been, changed. I mean, it's just fundamentally changed with the advent of streaming, as you mentioned earlier. We're going to continue to see momentum behind our business, which is why we have a responsibility to consumers to be very mindful about the experience, mindful about the data, that how it's collected and how it's used, because we just think that there's so much value and virtue in what we're building, without me sounding like I'm waving my hands over this, like we're solving the problems of humankind. That's not my point. My point is there's a lot of value, and consumers obviously like it because more and more, almost all televisions today are connected, and it's clear that the investment behind the experiences on a connected TV are just increasing, and we just want to be there to to be able to take our fair share and give something back to the consumer to keep them engaged.
Michael, that's fantastic. It's super interesting times. I mean, as you mentioned, an industry that's been around but has modernized, and obviously as a platform, the technology now sounds as sophisticated as any that you'd come across. I really do appreciate you being on and chatting with us about this. If somebody wants to learn more about LG Ad Solutions, how would they be able to do that?
We still invest heavily in our website at lgads.tv. LG Ads on the website, you'll see a lot of information. We invest significantly in consumer insights and white papers to sort of that illustrate a lot of what I just described with you. So visit us at LG Ads, and please, feel free if there's any interest in connecting. You'll be able to find me there as well. But Amir, I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I hope you found it useful. I hope the audience finds it useful, and I look forward to maybe connecting in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Michael, for being on the show. It was fantastic. That's it for the episode. Back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I thought this is a fantastic episode. When you talk about the future of advertising media, there's so many moving parts, so many things have changed, and so much opportunity. And I think that's really my takeaway is when you think you finally hit a point where, hey, we've got a mature product and opportunity, some dynamic changes, and there's even more road and opportunity in front of you. And that's the fantastic part about this. So share this episode with somebody else that might find it interesting. I thought it was a fantastic interview. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the podcast is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.